Hello, everybody. My name is Polly Hammond, and you are listening to Uncorked, the Italian wine podcast series about all things marketing and communication. Join me each week for candid conversations with experts from within and beyond the wine world as we explore what it takes to build a profitable business in today's constantly shifting environment. Today, we're joined by Jim Morris, Vice President of Guest Relations at Charles Krug, Napa's oldest winery. Jim has made it his mission to remove the pretension of the wine business, leading the way with a cultural program that includes wine, art, food, and history. And he's certainly succeeding with the second consecutive year of unparalleled event scheduling, including the Blue Note Jazz Festival, Napa Valley. Let's get into it. Jim Morris, I finally get to have you on my podcast. So glad that you're here. I have stories about meeting you that I want to share. They're nice stories.
Wow. All right.
I know. So welcome.
It's an honor to be here.
It's so not an honor, but it's sweet of you to say that.
It's the meteoric rise of Polly Hammond through, all 5 forests and things like that.
I sometimes feel like, it's the 5 forests, not the meteoric rise, but that's super sweet of you. I think it was mostly just a lot of hard work. And in fact, that is a lovely segue into the story I want to tell, which is when I first started being public with my business, because it took me about 2 years to have the nerve to do that. You were one of the first people that I encountered on social media, and you were sweet and welcoming, and you were warm, and I was thinking about that when I was doing the bio research for this podcast, because I actually have a quote that came up in the research where you say, this is about your role at Charles Krug. My goal is to create a memorable wine experience for everyone who visits us. And we have an obligation. So at Charles Krug, we have an obligation to share our remarkable legacy and lead the way for Napa to become a cultural hub through wine, art, food, and history. And quote, Jim insists that it is his mission to remove the pretension of the wine business. So I'm really happy to have you here. You said that. I know.
You said all that? Wow.
Yeah.
I'm smarter than I look.
But you know what? It's just one of these things that I just remember, like I was getting started in a new business, trying to find my feet. And this was years ago. And it would have been something, probably not memorable on your end at all. But for me, there was someone who was super sweet. And also because, you have been in the wine industry for a good long time. You've worked for a lot of good names. So thank you. See, these things really do matter.
It's funny because my social media journey has been an interesting one, because I truly feel like I've made some of my deepest, closest friends and connections through people I've never met before. And because I think you have to say, back in the old days when you had 140 characters to say something of great import, to, get your point across, it's like you really got a true read on what people were like in their 140 characters. And that you can really gauge the level of what they do or what they're how they're doing it. And I don't know, I've met people around the world now that, that I have befriended digitally. And I almost feel like those connections are much more than some that I've made over a lifetime.
Yeah. And so I said, I knew that Gen X was going to come up. And there it is right there. I do think that is something that our generation did so well, right? Like we were early. And so let's see, internet, end of my university years for the most part. So as a young adult, as a young married person, as a parent, like we went through all of these life journeys, and we didn't have the skepticism that our own children have. Like they know better than, and they live in a world of trolling and catfishing and shitty social media and everything else. But we kind of had the nice years of the internet where you had AOL Messenger and you were learning about things all over the world.
Yeah.
Um, so
I
yes,
still have my MySpace page and my, you know, and
well,
my
when Elon Musk buys Twitter, that might be worth something again.
you never know.
You
Yeah, I
never
still
know.
even have I have my original AOL account. That's my throwaway account that I always sign up. Jim Morris at AOL.com. It's like
You
it
We're all
was
going to
real.
spam you now.
Oh, that's fine.
Like
Let
wine
the world do
podcast
it.
spam.
I don't ever look at it anymore, and I have several 100,000 emails waiting to be opened and read.
Very
And
important
God
emails.
bless AOL servers or whoever owns it now.
So we're like the original early adopters. I think that we've done well as a generation.
Yeah.
And this is one thing that I've noticed because you are super on social media. And that has meant that the brand has also been, you know, up to speed. Like there was never sort of this feeling of lagging behind. And what I do remember, because we interviewed you early in the Real Business of Wine series, like right when the world
Yeah.
had started to shut down.
Yeah. You and
And
Robert. That
yeah,
was
Robert and I, and you had just implemented, or you were in the process of switching over an events program into a virtual events program. And you
mhm.
guys did some interesting things. Like you didn't do sort of the typical virtual events styles, like
we
you did comedy nights and stuff, right?
we we again trying to think differently because all of a sudden it was like, okay, how we can't welcome people to the winery. How do we bring the winery to the people? And it's like, well, we have this really uh, popular comedy series. We did a lot of food and wine related stuff, and the as weird as it sounds, I think the last 2 years have been transformational to the wine business. We've learned different ways to connect with people, and we had no idea what the hell we were doing. I mean, we just went, okay, let's go to Facebook Live because that seems like the place where if we just invite everybody to come and listen to us talk and drink wine, that they'll have a great time. And we did like 8 different episodes of live from Charles Krug. We didn't sell a single bottle of wine. We would even I even one got cheesy and held up signs that says, "Please buy more wine," or just and
Really?
and it was like it didn't work. It's like I had really cool events with the Madavi family sitting in grandpa's house talking about old times of gathering. And while it was really lovely and fun, it wasn't resulting in wine sales. So, and then we just kind of evolved into different things. It's like, so what are people still hungry for? One of the weird niches that we jumped into was a dating site. Um,
No.
so there was something called Events and Adventures, and I had heard an ad prior to the pandemic on the radio, and it was like, okay, well now they guaranteed that they had an activity every day in the city that the franchise was located for people to gather, and meet other singles, like-minded singles. So all of a sudden, those all dried up. So I said, well, let's do a wine tasting for them. Let's ship all these people a couple bottles of wine, and we'll just have 20 single women and 20 single guys, and we'll just all meet and gather and talk about wine and talk about history. And so we ended up doing, I don't know, 6, 7 of those. And it was, yeah, my favorite one was this guy in Houston, and it was like 5 guys and 20 women. And he was like, this guy was so pretentious and so crazy, so wanted to show off his serious wine knowledge.
Mm.
And so I just said, Ralph, I'm getting a lot of hints of pretension and a little bit of angst and a lot of pity and some self-doubt. And all the women just started busting up, and it was just kind of like my way of
Oh, poor
like, tone
guy.
down a little bit because you're losing all these nice ladies. And So I don't know, we did different things, and we tried our continuing our comedy shows. The comedians, it was so hard. The first comedy show we did, we made sure we muted everybody. That's a mistake because
Poor
comedians want to hear
comedians.
feedback.
Yeah.
I had like a comedian in New York, I had a comedian in LA for a couple different months, and we finally unmuted the third one, and they finally got feedback, which was fun, but people still did a lot of talking in between, and we eventually just people didn't buy as much wine as we had hoped, and I still wanted to pay the performers and the people behind booking them, so it was like there wasn't making money, but we tried something fun,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then
So
we tried
did
yeah,
anything
food.
stick? Like, were there things that you took out of all those virtual events that you're like, you know what, we're not going to do all of them anymore, but once the doors open, we're still doing these virtual events?
So my former tasting room manager, who had nobody to manage because we were closed, and my former events manager, who was also didn't have any work to do, still to this day remain my experiences producers. And we still do 3 to 4 virtual tastings a week for corporate clients. I was just sharing this with the VAPs I just had here that we we connected with a couple of financial services companies that they instead of flying into your hometown and renting a space at the Hyatt Regency, ballroom to have 100 people come in and listen to your financial services seminar,
Mm.
it's much cheaper to send them each 2 or 3 bottles of wine, have a little informal wine tasting for 20 to 30 people to hear like a 10 to 15-minute financial pitch at the beginning, wine tasting in the middle, a little bit of financial, planning, why you should contact us. They close more business as a result of these tastings than they ever did with the hotels. And
Wow.
and so I have 2 financial services companies that, and I no longer discount our wines. I hope they're not listening. Uh, yeah, they charge that we charge full price, and
Sure.
we add for a performance fee for my staff. So now it's a very lucrative part of our business, and so we do that, and we do in-home tastings. Um, we were doing a lot of reunions, like family reunions. They couldn't travel, so let's ship a bottle, 3 bottles of wine to all your family members all over the country. We'll arrange the Zoom, and we'll have a family reunion drinking wine. So
Yeah.
now that evolved into home. We'll fly to your town and we'll bring the wine, and we do home in-home tastings with they're basically wine Tupperware parties.
So did you have to
And
get ambassadors? Like, do your
these two
staff members
people,
actually go, or do you have satellite
no,
ambassadors? Oh,
no,
that's really interesting.
yeah. So that channel alone, I think that could, and so that evolved out of the virtual world as well. So now we'll fly. So my guys are getting ready to go to Kansas City for 3 days, where they've rented the ballroom or the penthouse suite of a big hotel in Kansas City. We're having 40 people that have all paid $150 per person to come and taste our wines and purchase our wines.
Wow.
And the event is paid for itself before we leave.
S
So
so you know what I think here is something that we forget. So people who maybe don't spend a lot of time mired in American shipping regulations for alcohol companies, you know, what happened, one of the big changes during the pandemic is that if you were a winery, you could ship all over the country. Whereas
mhm,
if you were a retailer, you were restricted to those sort of 14 or
yeah,
15 states. So something like this became a really good opportunity for wineries who before that perhaps had been hindered because of distribution, retail relationships. Well, you were the only ones who could actually ship all
yeah,
over the nation during COVID. And that was, I think that that's something maybe we don't talk about so much of how the ability for wineries to ship was one of the things that made such a big difference for us over, say, the other arms of selling alcohol in the States.
Yeah.
But I digress. I want to talk about these events because one of the reasons I really wanted to get you on was when I saw the article about Dave Chappelle hosting the Blue Note Napa Jazz Festival.
Hmm.
This is not the kind of news that we see coming out of wineries, Dave Chappelle. And I was looking at the list of performers. And again, another reason that I knew Gen X was going to come up. You've got George Clinton. Yeah, George
Yeah,
Clinton.
George Clinton.
Yes, I had Clinton just flashback. You've got all of these names that I'm like performing at a winery. We've all grown up. So you did this in 2021. You're doing it again this year. Can you just talk to me a little bit about how Napa's oldest winery ends up with Dave Chappelle hosting a jazz festival?
um, I'm going to go back to where this started. So, one of the things that when I was hired here 4+ years ago, by a person by my old boss Judd Wallenbrock, who was at a previous winery that I worked with um, in Sonoma County at Michel Schlumberger. And one of the things that he helped us define as a company and as a winery is like, what do we want to be? And it's like, and that's where the whole cultural hub of Napa Valley came into play. It's like, we want to be considered among one of the world's great family-owned wine estates, and we want to become this cultural hub of Napa Valley through food, wine, arts, and events. And events mean a lot of different things. It means, the first thing I did when I got here was we started comedy shows because I knew a comedy producer. And it started off literally 20 feet from where I'm, sitting right now. And it was this upstairs loft area. And we had 45 people for our first night. And it was just a super cool vibe. And it was like, okay, this is an event unlike anything this winery's ever seen. And then those became monthly, and then it kind of grew from there. And Judd had a relationship with the guy that owns the Blue Note Napa,
Mm-hmm.
which is also part of Blue Note New York and around the world. They're a pretty well-known brand. And so during COVID, they had to shut down their Napa location. But our winery presented an amazing opportunity where we have this beautiful outdoor space. We have a
Because
couple
you
of
have a
big
huge space. I mean,
we
like a
do. It's a
huge,
pretty
huge space. Yeah.
significant, size property. So, and we're also unique that uh, we're grandfathered into a lot of things. So I can do events that most wineries cannot. Um,
Wow.
so it's like utilizing the asset that we have here in the best way possible. And it's getting people in. We used to joke, it's like my job was getting people to make a right-hand turn down our driveway off Highway 29 on their way to other properties more popular than us to the north. So it's, how do we do that? So this partnership with the Blue Note was announced. Um, we actually brought in the Napa Valley Health commissioner, like saw the whole plan. She blessed it. She says, this is a perfect scenario. It was outdoors, you know, so we had 150 two-top tables spread 10 feet apart. And,
Wow.
the staff and everybody was masked, but it was outdoors. And so we had 300 to 400 people per show. And for most of these performers, it was their first or their only performance of 2021. That, we had Kenny G for 6 shows,
That's
in front of
incredible.
300 people. And it was like, everybody was so happy to be together and to be, you know, back as a community.
Mm.
And, it certainly helped wine sales. It even helped a couple restaurants that we partnered with to serve food. So it was kind of this rising tide thing. And so we did in 2021, we did 72 shows.
So,
Um,
but it wasn't just Blue Note, or were those
it
all
was
Blue
all
Note?
Blue Note. So
Those were all Blue Note.
we became the venue, and Blue Note became the executor of all the shows. So then this year, fast forward to this year, the idea of a jazz festival was floated, and Blue Note had been wanting to do something like this, and so they came back to us and said, "We have this great idea. It's a big use of your property, but we think that we can do this." And so they put together this masterful lineup that just once Chappelle's he supports Robert Glasper, who is one of the more famous jazz musicians out there right now, and so Robert Glasper is actually the artist in residence for this jazz festival. So it really is his, and then he brought in a lot of the talent. So from Maxwell to Erica Badu to um, I
I
think
know it.
Corinne
I'm
Bailey
looking at the
Rays.
list. It's just phenomenal, but it's also so interesting to me because these are not, this is not what so much of the world thinks of when they think about events at wineries.
No,
So you've got the festival, but you also have a whole summer season
yeah. So we
of
have
of
so,
performers.
and because I have this amazing property, I mean, I can. Uh, One of my favorite stories is last year. I had to tell Kenny G to turn his music down because I had a wedding for 400 on the other side of the property, and I literally,
And
it's
was
like,
the wedding complaining? They weren't
uh,
like, "Yeah, Kenny G
well,
played the music for our wedding."
they really cranked the amperage because we've never had that sound bleed before. And for whatever reason, it was so loud that night that it was disrupting part of the service. And so my
What a
manager was
great
running it,
story, though,
said, it's
really.
like, can you tell somebody to turn it down a little bit? And which they did. And, it was fine
Yeah.
because one of the speakers literally had been kind of turned differently. Um, but because of the size of the property, I even have parking for that many people. So like 500 at the concert and 400 at the wedding. I have an amazing space to park people. Um,
Do you have to
so
have,
we're,
like, a little tram? Like, how do you accommodate that much parking?
it's a lovely walk across our property. So
Okay.
it's
Alright.
no more than, how you would park at a stadium or something. Um, but
So
it's,
this is just quick interruption on this. This is something that we go through with brands, when we're kind of getting into their offer and their positioning, is that it's always this dig deep and figure out what your unfair advantage is. So, like, every brand has something that is an unfair advantage, whether it's, the location, the parking, whether it's that you've got a nephew who is a world renowned artist or whatever it is. Like, we all have these offerings, capabilities, friends sometime. Yeah. And actually just saying, okay, this is my unfair advantage. And now what the hell do we do with it? Um,
yeah.
so so you've got the event going, but you've got this through the entire summer.
So for May 20th, Jeffrey Osborne's the first performer through the end of September. We have that, but on top of it all, we do. There's a bunch of other things we're doing. That we're home to
Yeah. Tell me about
Festival
that.
Napa Valley. It's literally the largest fundraiser in Napa Valley. I believe that they have there. I want to say I might be off a little bit, but they have performances at 80 different venues in Napa Valley over a 10-day, 11-day period. So go to
And what's it
Festival
a
Napa
fundraiser
Valley.
for?
So they have about a dozen to 15 different charitable organizations, all located here in Napa Valley, that they fund either entirely or this is their complete. Their focus is art programs, serving underserved communities,
Wow.
health clinics.
So it's a
So it's like
win-win. I mean,
it's a
it's
completely
yeah.
great thing, and the ticket prices they're like $15. to come and see like the Vienna Philharmonic or Jennifer Hudson or the Robert Bolle dance troupe. You know, some of the world's greatest opera singers, uh, ballet performers, symphonies are all in Napa for this, and I get to host 8 days worth of.
So
Um,
how do you I'm just so curious, someone like a ballet company, how do
mhm.
you make that happen? Like, like what does that involve in terms of logistics and setup and relationships and partnerships? Because again, not what we tend to think of when we think wine event.
It's it requires the right people running the operations. The Festival Napa Valley folks have been doing this for years,
Okay.
and so they have the stage builders, they have the behind the scenes people, they have the logistics people. There is
So you guys don't have to take that on board. So this is
we're
really about wise partnerships.
we're a venue. We're a magnificent venue with great wines, and so ultimately there's got to be a tie in here. So we sell wine to patrons during this event. For the Blue Note, Blue Note buys wine from us, and we sell.
Sure.
They sell it to patrons. It's just, but it has to benefit us. We're not a charitable organization, and to put our staff and our team through these paces, it had better make financial sense, or you know we're not fiscally responsible ourselves. So
Well, okay. You brought it up. We work in wine. Let's
yeah.
talk about this. The money side of things. I think that sometimes, as anyone who's listened to me talk knows, wine can have kind of poor around sense around how we spend our money, how we forecast it. I've seen brands who something looks like a great idea, they plow forward with it, but maybe some of the underpinnings, the business acumen wasn't there. So you have you have a financial structure for sort of how these events have to work, right? Like this is
Mhm.
part of your business model.
Yes, yeah. Um, there are ways to be altruistic and to help organizations that can't afford to rent our property, which we do, and we've had real conversations with a lot of our charitable partners because um, it's expensive to run this business. No matter if you're a big or a small winery, it's just magnified. This is an intense, capital intensive business, and people are expensive, and barrels are expensive, and farming is expensive, and
And
this is not for
California
the
is expensive. Yeah.
oh, it's not for the faint of heart or the light of wallet. I mean, it's
Mm.
like you need to have the resources to do this. So the idea in some of these conversations I've had with charitable partners, where in the past we would completely donate everything, but we would say, let's get creative and find a way that we can at least cover our costs. And whether that is a special offer to your database, whether that is you know uh, you know some sort of the ability to market to your guests, your clientele, or through wine sales or something like that. But it's like I just the days of giving stuff away, people don't value free,
Yeah.
and
And we
and
get
it
asked for a lot of free stuff in wine because
absolutely.
people love free wine. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's of course but do they value it as much as as they could or should? And that's the important thing to me. It's like you have to value what's being given to you. And so people are understanding. If you talk frankly and candidly to people, then you're just clear. I had a really interesting conversation with my staff this morning about just this, that for the first time in a long time, we're charging for our wine club parties. And
Really? Your pickup parties.
Yeah,
Wow.
and we have a fairly substantial wine club, and we're getting a fair bit of pushback from this because people have been enjoying these things for free for years. And it was, the conversations all centered around, all right, how much money do we want to lose on this wine club event?
Yeah.
Versus, the lifetime value of these customers certainly comes into play and it comes into the mix. But it's like, it's it's just crazy expensive to do things these days. If you can find people, if you can, so it's like
And
we
everything is
want,
just getting more expensive. I mean, like, this is
yeah,
the thing that we're seeing between costs, labor, shipping, supplies. Like, I don't know any of my clients right now who aren't dealing with increases in their costs. And
no,
I mean, I can't understand it. I am also a consumer, but that trickles down to all of us. And you have the moment when you're like, well, everything that I pay for is becoming more and more expensive. But I think, as someone who preaches about our issues of the business model and pricing in wine, that notion that we actually price correctly and that we have models of brands who are pricing correctly and can, this is a space where bigger, more established wineries can help sway the whole expectation, the whole industry, because if it's happening from the top down, then consumers start to have a different expectation of what the value promise is. It's not about a commodity, right? It's about, okay, you may pay for it, but what you're going to get by paying for it is superlative. Anyway, back to it because I do want to talk about your events. So you have a few cultural things. Are you able to talk about some of the kind of unusual cultural things that you have happening on site? I don't know what's been published or what's still embargoed, so that's why I'm being cagey with the
yeah, no,
ask.
no, no. So we're still working on to finalize an event that we're hoping to do this year. There's a group of they prefer to be called Chicano artists, and these young artists have an organization called Beyond the Label. And what it is this group of uh, there's three young men that have put this whole thing together. They have their day jobs are like they're graphic artists, they're a mechanic, and they're laborers but they're amazingly talented artists that is tied into a whole Latin community of artists. So we want to give them our winery to let them have their festival here.
That's
And so
amazing.
yeah, so it's like, and they just said, well, how much is it? We're not going to charge for this. In fact,
Yeah.
we're just this is like one of those doing the right thing sort of things that
Well, this is
needs to
why you do
happen.
charge for the other things, so that when
Yeah,
there's
I
the
mean it's part
moment,
of.
yeah,
So this is part of being the cultural hub because, frankly, without the Latin community, it's like none of these wineries exist.
no.
They just don't. And so
And
it's
also, I think that it's just, I mean, we can talk about it in political context, we can talk about it in doing the right thing, but also it's interesting, it's creative, it's different from what every other, winery is thinking that they might be doing. So it does really set apart. I have a question about how are you seeing that this is changing your audience? Are you seeing that people are coming back and remembering you because you've done something that's just so profoundly different from, maybe what we're seeing in a lot of American wine brands?
you know I'd like to think so. I mean, I definitely am seeing a lot of a very diverse group coming through here now, and even going back to the comedy days when we hosted the LGBTQ comedy festival. We hosted the first Asian comedy festival.
Right.
Just different. It's like I just want people on the property. It's like I want people to see what a special place this is, and then you know, oh, just make it approachable. Back to earlier statement about the pretension in the wine business, you know, Elizabeth and I laugh about this all the time. But when I first started in this business, I hated the pretension. Um, to this day, I still don't use adjectives. I hate adjectives in talking about wine, and I tend to like not.
We need a
I'll,
T-shirt. No adjectives when talking about wine. Like that right
because
there says so much.
yeah, because I literally, it's like I don't want people to taste. It's like you're going to get hints of blueberry and blackberry and
Mhm.
cranberry and molasses, and then they taste it and they don't get it and they go, oh God, I suck at wine tasting, and I don't want them
I'm
to
gonna go
feel
have a
that.
beer now because it's just so.
Yeah. So and I always tell, I break it down for Elizabeth that this has been one of my catchphrases for day one. There are two wines made. There is yummy and yucky. That's it. And if
Yeah.
it's on the yucky spectrum, it's like, you know what? Do some research, find a really good wine pairing with that, a food
There are
pairing with
lots of
that
ways to
wine.
make it yummy.
It's
Or
like, and
sometimes
try,
it might just always be yucky. It's
yeah.
okay. There are yucky wines.
And I even tell people, it's like, you want to put an ice cube in your Chardonnay? Go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
If you want to drink, spritzy Moscato, God bless you.
Yeah.
It's like, that's the gateway wine.
So one of the things that I remember about Charles Krug, now this, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys were always pretty family friendly, right?
Still to this day, it's like
To this day.
family-owned winery. I
Playground?
welcome
Was there a
kid.
playground? Do I
I have
vaguely remember that?
a grassy knoll, as we
A
like to say.
grassy knoll. That's what it
So, but
was.
we have a really nice cabana area outside that has cabanas. We're dog friendly, we're kid friendly, family friendly, um, and it's like, and people are respectful of other people's space, and
Well, that was
we have
gonna
a
be my next question is, do you ever get any pushback when people are like, "I don't
yeah,
come to a winery to be around this,"
occasionally.
but
Um,
not as much as,
Yeah, it's
you know?
I view it as, it's like wine is a social beverage, and we come together as a community to enjoy great wine and great spaces, and it's like let's just treat everybody like family and community. And if you want a really high end tasting, I have a really beautiful library room that I can sit down and do a formal tasting, and I'll use adjectives until I'm blue in the face and talk about terroir and soil types and clonal varieties and
Are
you
there
know
pictures of hands holding grapes on the wall? Because
no,
if there's
no,
not, we gotta get them in that room, really.
no, I do
Um,
have like old vines hanging from the wall, but
so in terms of the ongoing marketing, because I'm just looking at this, I put on my marketer hat. I can't not do it. And I think to myself, okay, you've got all of these events. If I would be saying, how do we get all of these people into social media, into databases, into sort of that follow-on process? Is this something where your team had to like strategically sit down and think about what the customer journey looked like? Or was it much more organic when you're like, okay, let's see how this plays out?
um, great question. Social media for our brand hasn't had a huge formal structure, until the last few
It's had
years.
you.
Well, no, but it had other. We brought on a social media team that does our messaging. We still don't put a lot of as much in resources to the Charles Krug brand, as I'd like, but we're working on that. And
Okay.
I have a couple of other commercial brands that the Simondavi family owns that are very active, in live events or Instagram events or things like that. So they have there's a different marketing program in place for them. In my world, it's like, to me, it's hand to hand combat. When I have a group of, we entertain 50 people a day from the Napa Valley wine train. And one of my, it's a great business model. They pay us to bring us customers to buy our wines. Um, it's like that works, but it's like, but how do I get them back? How do I get them to join our club? How do I get them to, even just sign up to be, on our database? And we haven't perfected it yet. But I always say it's like in everything I do, I always go hashtag Charles Krug. It's
You
like,
do. That's true. You
oh,
are very good about that. And I think the other thing that I want to say, kind of from the sensible marketing side of it, is no brand can do everything. I see too many brands who they try to do everything, and the result of it is they kind of do all of it half assed, as opposed to saying, go back to what is the unfair advantage? What can we do really well? And we're putting our eggs in that basket because we know that that works for us. Um, so I think that there's sense in saying, well, social media is going to work really well for some brands, and it may be events, it may be telemarketing for another brand. Like everyone has a space that, because of where they are and what their capabilities are, it's just going to work really well for them.
yeah,
So for me, I wouldn't sit here and ever tell you, well, you need to be doing 1,000 other marketing things, because why?
you,
You have
you can't.
a
Yeah,
great, you've got a great offering. So you've got the events. I just want to ask some logistical questions because, again, I'm super fascinated by this. So your whole 2022 year is like completely planned out.
for the
When do you
most part,
start?
yeah.
When do you start planning for 2023?
Oh, we've already got several weddings on the books, jazz festivals on the books. The festival Napa Valley is on the books, 23 and beyond. Um,
Wow,
One of the things, if I know it's a recurring event, I'm instead of trying to secure year after year after year deals, it's like, you know what? Let's do a 5-year deal, and we'll give you a break on the whole package.
that is
So it's
so
like
much good
that.
business sense.
It just, because we can and we have a very desirable place to be. It's like, let's just lock up these dates now and know what we're doing and know some of the revenue stream that we have coming in. So it's like that part is really important to, begin that process. So I have several recurring events that, they said, yeah, let's do it. 5-year deal. No, it's done deal. And so it's like, again, it's being mindful of the business. And part of they hear the word sustainability all the time. And one of my favorite people that I've worked with in his business is a guy named Paul Dolan, who he was the original winemaker at Fetzer Vineyards. Really was the first true organic winery, back in the '70s. And but he goes, it's great to be, you know, the organic. It's great to be, but he goes, we also have an obligation to be financially sustainable.
Yep.
And it's like you
And
can't
actually, we have an obligation to our people to be financially sustainable. Like that's
totally.
something we forget about, is that we're employers, we support communities, and we can't do that if we don't have sound practices.
Yeah, and so that's another one of those things. It's like this was to quote a Judd term. It was like it's the human terroir of our business.
So you've told us so much about how this is run, and I think that you've already shared an awful lot of lessons. But I will just ask. So, we go out to wineries all over the world with this podcast. If someone's sitting there and they're thinking to themselves, like whether they're in Italy or Bordeaux or Napa or Minnesota, wherever it is, and they're like, "Ooh, we want to do this," you know, what are what were the couple big screw ups that you never could have foreseen? What are the things to say, here's what you need to know. This is the one thing you have to do. Like, what's that little bit of advice that can give them a tiny bit of a leg up? Maybe, hopefully, not competing with you. No one will have that much parking, but maybe pave
Yeah,
their way a little bit.
I think um, having the right partners is imperative. Um, Sometimes your skill set isn't in house, and just because you have an events coordinator doesn't mean that you can do great events. It's like you have great events within that person's capabilities. But if you partner with and align yourself with the right groups and organizations, bring in great talent to help you run events, or bring in great partners like the Blue Note to bring great events to you, or bring people here, or bring in. I've outsourced all of my events to a company called Milestone Events Group, who runs our events flawlessly. Um, and
That right
things,
there, that is a great lesson because I think too many brands, whether it's events or something else, they get a wild hair and they're like, we'll figure out how to do it ourselves. And we've all been to those events that you're just like, you know,
yeah,
fire festival. Yeah, so that's so that is a brilliant takeaway is hire out for something like events management.
yeah,
Awesome. Awesome.
yeah. It's like bring in best of class in different areas. I even my pizza program this year. We have an outdoor pizza oven, and we had exactly zero resumes submitted for the posted, pizza chef position that we have. It's every uh, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We have a beautiful pizza oven. Couldn't find a chef, and it's not worth hiring a full time chef. So I started looking around and found down in Napa, the Salvation Army has a culinary school, and so part of this it's these are people in recovery, and they
Mm.
teach them. It's a 2-year program where they teach them culinary skills. And I said, I know you're a temperance organization, but would you like to come up and cook pizzas at our winery for 3 days a
That was
week?
ballsy, Jim.
And so it was just like, and so now they're showing up on Friday for our first trial run, and they actually got approval from the national chapter, going, yeah, this the reality of the culinary world. They're teaching these people in recovery culinary skills. They're going to be around, alcohol wherever they end up. So it's like how to best do it. So it's like given the right situation and right opportunity, let's do it. And so, so it's you just have to think differently. You have to just can't just keep trotting out the same old stuff all the time.
Do you know what I love about this? I did not intend for this to happen as we were going through all of this. I really love the sweet bookending of this because, for me, I started with this story of you were warm and you were welcoming and, kind of expansive in a way where sometimes wine trade can be a little bit more reserved. And sort of coming to the end of this, I guess my big takeaway is that a lot of the ways that you and therefore Charles Krug as a winery looked at this was much more expansive. How do we go out into the community and find what we need? How do we open our doors? How do we make it a space where everyone feels welcome? And it's such a nice story to hear. I really do hope that people like take away the not it's not so much about the practice of having, Dave Chappelle and Blue Note in, but it's more about just being really expansive with how you think about what your winery can service in a space.
I mean, there are 500 wineries in Napa, plus there's 1,100 wineries in a 2-hour driving radius from where I'm sitting, and it's like, how do you stand out? It's like it's already daunting enough for first time visitors to go, oh my god, and it's like,
It's
and
daunting for us. It's daunting for trade. I mean, so yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Just take away the barriers to entry, the psychological barriers to entry. Jim, thank you so much.
this has been a total a wonderful hour spent, and it's like I look forward to someday meeting in person, and the 3D version.
And that's a wrap. Thank you for listening, and a very big thank you to Jim Morris for joining me today. The Italian Wine Podcast is among the leading wine podcasts in the world, and the only one with daily episodes. Tune in each day and discover all our different shows. Be sure to join us next Sunday for another look at the world of wine marketing.
guys, I'm Joy Livingston, and I am the producer of the Italian Wine Podcast. Thank you for listening. We are the only wine podcast that has been doing a daily show since the pandemic began. This is a labor of love, and we are committed to bringing you free content every day. Of course, this takes time and effort, not to mention the cost of equipment, production, and editing. We would be grateful for your donations, suggestions, requests, and ideas. For more information on how to get in touch, go to ItalianWinePodcast.com.